Oh, as a general thing, we have about maybe 2 or 3 weeks of class left, 2 or 3 weeks of class time left. So today we'll do grammaticalization, and on Wednesday we'll move on to American English, right? And next week we'll do international Englishes, world Englishes. So we'll study Englishes that are used elsewhere in the world, right? And then we'll do a review for about 1 or 2 times. Okay. So last time we went over the TV distinction, you remember, right? So the TV distinction has to do with a contrast between two forms of address, usually pronouns, right? In English, we talked about the TH form, right? The TH form. In English is the TH form and the Y form, right? The tao, ti, tai form, and the you, your, and so on form, right? The reason why it's called the TV is because T is in Latin tu, right? And V is vos, right? So the V form is more polite, and the T form is more casual and more familiar, right? And maybe in most of European languages, there is this distinction between the T and the V, right? Now, in English, we have the TH and the Y form, right? Up to early modern English. And then the TH form just died out, right? After maybe perhaps the 17th century till the 18th century. So we have now only one form. But since we study the history of English, we study the change or the development of the pronoun system, right? Now, the two forms of address signify different levels of many things, right? Including politeness, including social status, and also familiarity or contempt, right? So in perhaps here, this is more like social factor, right? Social factor. And here, this is more like emotive factor or situational factor, right? So social status, so if I am higher than you socially, for example, parents to children or professor to students, like that. So social status, right? Social factor. So we are likely to use the Y form, right? Or the V form if we want to signal higher social status. And also context, also formal versus informal, right? And the last two, familiarity and contempt, these are more emotive factors or context-specific factors, right? So there are two main factors, social factor and also the emotive factors. So what I gave to you, who just came in, Sakwan, did you get this handout? So come here. So we'll see examples. You saw examples last time from personal letters. Now, this time, we look at examples from depositions. You guys know depositions, right? So depositions are out-of-court oral testimonies of a witness recorded in writing for discovery. In other words, a deposition is like a police statement, right? So a police statement is made when a police investigates a crime, right? Or any kind of conflict issue between two parties, right? And the police go around and ask people what happened and who said what and so on. So this is what it means by deposition. So we have depositions from early modern English, right? And there is linguistic value for depositions. We know that it's in writing, right? A deposition is always in writing, right? However, it's closer to spoken language because we tend to record everything verbatim. You guys know the word verbatim? Verbatim, verbatim, meaning that it's word by word. In a deposition, it's important to record things verbatim, right? Because you want to know who says what to whom, right? So the verbatim quality is very, very important. So it's more reliable than other written records such as novel or such as poetry and so on. But there are some issues that perhaps the person who wrote down the deposition had their own conventions, made their own mistakes and so on. However, still it's one of the closest things to spoken language, right? Now, so there are maybe 7 or 8 examples. So I'll go over perhaps 5 or 6 since we don't have a lot of time. So in number 1, what do you have? In number 1 is a deposition that has to do with sheep stealing, right? So someone stole a sheep from someone else, right? And it's a conversation between 2 relatively high-class men, right? 2 high-class men and 1 low-class slave by the name of Roger Don, right? So when you see this situation, what do you think will happen with the use of tu and thou and you? So what happens is, this is where the social factor, right, will come into play, right? Remember, social factor has to do with the status, right, and the context, whether it's formal or informal, right? Now, given the fact that this is a rather informal because it's an exchange between 2 parties, right? One party consists of 2 high-class men, and the other party consists of 1 slave, 1 lower-class Roger Don. So the social factor here has to do with status, right? So status. So Mr. Anthony, who is one of the high-class men here, he goes, did not you, did not thou, right? Did not thou, this is the low form, right? Did not thou promise me that thou would tell me and the person of Hunstanworth who sold George Whitfield sheep. So didn't you promise me that? Didn't you promise that you would tell me that, right? So that's the translation. But here, the form that they use is the TH form, right? So this is what we would expect, right? From a high class person to low class person. So this is governed by social status. Because Anthony here is a high class, socially higher class. Roger Don, so he replied, Roger Don, I need not unless I will. I need not unless I want to, in other words. I don't have to unless I want to. Will is will, right? Now Radcliffe replies, thou breaks promise, right? You broke your promise, in other words, right? So here's the TH form again. So this is what we would expect, right? Because from high class to lower class person. So you have the TH form. Now Roger Don, you will know it soon enough, for your man, Nicol Dixon, stole them that there stands upon Thursday before Christmas, then last class, and so on. So this is what we would expect too, right? That from low to high, you would use the Y form, right? So from high to low, you would use the TH form. So from low to high, social status, you would use the Y form. That's what we would expect, right? And then in the last 2 lines, you have, for although you'll be a gentleman, right? For although you'll be a gentleman and I, a poor man, my honesty shall be as good as yours, right? So this is the slave, Roger Don. So it's appropriate that he would address the 2 high-class men with the Y form, right? Yeah, you, and then as good as yours, right? So this would be appropriate according to our expectation here, right? And then what said thou? So what did you say? Liken thou thy honesty to my. How dare you liken, how dare you compare your honesty to my honesty, like that. So this is what we would expect too, right? The TH form. Right? So in this example, the TH and the Y form are governed by social status, right? Okay, so let's look at number 2. Number 2 will be a different thing. So this is a not so pleasant exchange between Bullman's wife and Stilling. about, again, about stealing. So you have two people. One is a woman and the other one, I don't know the gender. So you have two people here talking, not so pleasant conversation. So we don't know about the social status of the two. So let's assume that they stand at the same level, right? But there will be other contextual factors that tell you what governs the use of you and thou. Now the first person, the woman to stealing here, naughty pack. Naughty pack is like worthless person. So worthless, naughty pack, right? So worthless person. Is this good or bad? Bad, right? So this is a contextual clue that tells you that perhaps whatever governs the use of you and thou is the emotive factor, right? Rather than the social factor. So now the conversation starts out with, hey, you, worthless person, like that, right? So now the listener, he should feel enraged or he should feel that he was looked down upon, right? So let's see how he responds. Stealing to the woman who calls him by that name. What naughty, this is naughty, right? What naughtiness, what wickedness, in other words, what wickedness, naughtiness. So the spelling might be off a bit because this is early modern English, right? Wickedness or wickedness or naughtiness. So what naughtiness know you by me? What wickedness do you know about me? In other words, I'm neither goose stealer, so he steals geese, right? Nor gander is like male goose, nor male goose stealer. I would you knew it. I would rather you knew it. In other words, I would rather you knew it, right? And then the first person says back, what? Naughty whore. Whore, okay? Not a good word to use. Today we spell it with WH, right? WHORE. So, what naughty whore? Call thou me goose stealer, and so on. So the contrast here is the use of you, right? The use of you and the use of thou here. So perhaps this person is enraged, right? So that's the emotive factor, right? That's the emotive factor. However, how do we account for the use of you here? We can say that stealing still wants to be polite, right? So that he maintains the use of you. However, when you read this sentence, what naughtiness, what wickedness know you by me? I'm neither goose stealer nor the gander stealer. This is my translation. I would you know it. So I would rather you knew it. So he wants to maintain the level of politeness, right? However, his response is not so polite, but it implies that the other person is doing the stealing, not him, right? So let me write this down for you. So the you here signified politeness. Can you see? Yes, politeness. However, the response implies accusation back. Right. Back to the first person. But then in the next one, the person got enraged, right? How, naughty whore, can you call me a good stealer like that? So now we are on to the second page, right? Now what's interesting is that he switches, right? Before he used the you form to maintain the level of politeness. Now here no. He switches to no. No, I know thee for no such, and I thank you for your good report. While you and I talk further, right? So you see that there's the switch of you to thee here, right? Although the person ends with, I thank you for your good report. So what governs the use of thee here is the emotive function again, right? So emotive function. But in the last two, I thank you for your good report. In this case, and while you and I talk further, in this case, we can say that the context is different because it has nothing to do with mutual accusation or anything emotive anymore, but it's the end of the conversation, right? And where you go back to reporting the deposition. So the person is trying to be more formal by thanking that person. I thank you for your good report while you and I talk further. So it seems that the emotive factor stops here, and then something else starts here, right? That's why people can switch you and the Y form and the TH form. Okay? Let's see, since we don't have enough time to cover everything here, let's see which one is more interesting. Let's look at, let's see, number 6, which one is that? Number 7, actually, number 7. Number 7 is a conversation by two people of the same rank, a gentlewoman and a gentleman, so higher than just commoners, right? Higher than commoner, higher than ordinary people, like that. So we have, then she told him, you have blood in your heart. I think you would be one of the first that will have a hand in the murder, like that, right? So in this case, you would expect the form you to be used, right? Because one, it's a formal setting. This is not just a quarrel, not a fight between two people, but reading from the context, then she told him, you have blood in your heart. I think you would be one of the first that would have a hand in it, right? So in this case, the social factor, which is the rank or the social status of the two people, governs the use of the Y form or the TH form. One of the clear ones is number 4 also, if you look at number 4. Number 4 is a witness deposition in a witch trial. Witness deposition, so who accuses who of being a witch and uses magic to bewitch people and so on. So this is, let's see, what a daughter tells a father, right? So from the context, now you see, father, I'm sure I'm bewitched by the Chattock, Anne Chattock and Anne Redfern, her daughter. I pray you cause them to be laid in Lancaster Castle, blah, blah, blah. And the father answered, thou art a foolish lad. It's not so, it is thy miscarriage. So I should underline that TH form. So here, what governs the use of the TH form and the U form is the social status again, right? It's because this is between the daughter and the father, right? So the daughter, you expect that she would use what? The U form, right? The Y form to the father, and the father would use the TH form to the daughter, which is what we have here, right? So this is to the daughter, and the U form to the father, right? And last example that we'll look at is example on page 3. This is the last one from page 3. From personal letters again. From personal letter, of course, this is personal, so the context doesn't have to do with formality or informality, right? Because it's personal, so it's always informal, right? So you don't have to choose between the two different contexts. Now we have a letter from the mother to a son, right? The mother to the son. So in most of this conversation, you will see the TH form. So bless thee ever in thy going, thy coming in, and thy loving promises, thy good, and to put thy mind of believing thy for thy own, for thy loving mother, right? So in most of this, you would expect the use of the TH form, right? Especially when, if you read in detail, if you read this passage in detail, when it has to do with loving, familiarity, and anything that is close between any conversation topic that is personal between the mother and the son. However, on the other hand, you see the use of you, a few yous in here, right? And the context is that the use of you here is when she offers more general advice. So you, more general advice to the son. On the other hand, the TH form is used when she talks about love, when she talks about some intimate issue. So let's see here. I was very glad to hear by your first letter that you were so safely arrived at your wish port. So anything that's general. But when she talks about love, may God bless you, that kind of thing, she will switch to TH. So the TH form, again, is more casual, right? And it signals more familiarity and more intimacy between two people. So just like the form no or nika in Korean, right? So if you use it appropriately, it will signal familiarity, intimacy between people, right? If you use it appropriately, right? In an appropriate context. So any questions about the U and the TH form? So there seems to be at least two factors, right? One is the social factor, and the other one has to do with the emotive factor, which has to do with intimacy, familiarity, casualty, and so on. Right? So now we move to a new topic because we don't have a lot of time, so we have to get going here. So the new topic here is grammaticalization, which is difficult, but not very difficult. Who might need a printout for this PowerPoint file? Now, grammaticalization, this is more difficult than the TH and the U topic, right? The TH and the U topic is sociolinguistic, is what we call sociolinguistic, right? So things that have to do with social factors, things that have to do with other important issues that are not totally language. So social issues that have impact upon language use. But here, grammaticalization has to do with language itself. And while there are some other social factors, the linguistic factor is most important here, right? So we'll explore the concept of grammaticalization, and we'll see various examples of grammaticalization. And you should be able to, after we finish this, you should be able to explain how grammaticalization works and explain why certain constructions have the meaning they do. The reason why I separate this out as a topic is because I think it has explanatory power for you to understand many things that otherwise you wouldn't be able to explain from a what we call synchronic point of view. Because we look at language from a historical point of view, right? Not from a present day point of view. We can see what happens in different stages. So if we study grammaticalization, you will have the power to explain things that otherwise you couldn't explain, right? So the definition first, what is grammaticalization? So grammaticalization comes from grammar plus equal plus ice plus Asian, right? So this has to do with ice is to make, right? To make. So to make something into grammar, right? So this has to do with how grammatical items arise, how grammatical items in a particular language arise, how grammatical items come into being, in other words. This term was coined by Antoine Millet in 1912 to refer to the shift of an independent word to the status of a grammatical element. So in other words, you have a lexical item, right? A lexical item, a word, like a noun, a verb, like that, adjective, adverb. But that word changes into a grammar word, right? Words that do not have major meaning, but they do grammatical job, right? Process whereby novel function words, novel is new, right? New function words or phrases come into being into a language arising out of the reanalysis of content word. So it involves reanalysis, which we talked about some time before, right? This may involve transfer from major lexical categories to minor grammatical categories so that noun, verbs, and adjectives may become adverbs, auxiliary, and preposition. So to say it, to put it in simple terms, grammaticalization is a process whereby lexical items, you know lexical items, right? Vocabulary, like verbs, nouns, adjectives, or adverbs. Lexical item become grammatical item. For example, the word will, you know the word will? The word will as a noun or as a verb, right? In Old English, it means want, to want, wanhada, right? So to want. However, the word will now, in modern English, we still have the word will as a noun, right? If you have the will to do it, for example. So you have that, right? But you also have the will that is a modal, auxiliary, right? Which means what? The future marker, right? So future marker, as in, I will go to the store, will you marry me? Like that, right? So grammaticalization explains this kind of change from a word, a real word, will as a noun, will as a verb. We still have will as a verb, if you will, right? Buy me, 밥사주세요, buy me lunch. If you will here is not future, right? If you will, if you want to do it, if you wish to do it, right? That's not future, right? We still have that, but the majority of the use of will nowadays has to do with will being a future marker, right? So grammaticalization explains this kind of shift from a real word to a grammatical marker, right? Future marker. Grammatical item or less lexical word. For example, from noun or verb to prepositions. So prepositions. Right. Prepositions are less lexical than nouns and verbs, right? We'll see a lot of examples of prepositions today. Okay, so we are on the same page about this, what grammaticalization is. For example, we used to have words like had and leak, right, in Old English, which we came across from time to time. They are nouns. They are nouns. Had means state or quality. However, that word is no longer a word, right? In modern English, it became hood, H-O-O-D, hood, H-O-O-D, hood, right? In modern English. However, that word is no longer a word, but it has become a morpheme, right? Hood, which means a quality of being, for example, brotherhood, sisterhood, right? Neighborhood, the quality. But you don't have the noun hood that stands alone nowadays. The hood that you wear, that's not the same hood. That's from a different root, right? So from a single word, a single lexical item, had, or which noun is hood, becomes a morpheme, right? That indicates the quality, the suffix quality. Neighborhood, brotherhood, sisterhood, womanhood, manhood, like that. Leak, which means body, right? Used to mean body, has become ly, li now. Remember, the C at the end is dropped, the Y changes to Y, the I changes to Y, right? Phonologically speaking. But li, nowadays, we don't have it as a standalone word anymore. We use it as a adverb suffix, right? For example, sickly, beautifully, cruelly, and so on, right? Or Latin, the verb habere, which means to have, right? To have. Now, the verb habere has become a suffix on other verbs in Romance languages, which means will, to will, future marker. To compras, so the as here is from the as there, from the verb to have, but it has become a future marker, right? Which you cannot tell. You cannot tell by looking at the as, right? It has to be used together with a verb to mean I will buy, right? So this kind of thing is grammaticalization. Right? So this is what we talked about before. However, this is more in detail, clines, meaning different degrees of grammaticalization. So from lexical item, everything starts out as a lexical item, right? Content word, lexical item. And then it becomes grammatical item, right? Or functional word, functional item. And then if it goes further, it can go into a clitic. You guys know clitic. Clitic is something that you hang after a word. So for example, so I'll, so this is a clitic. So this is a clitic. Or the word not, so isn't, like this is a clitic. So something that you stick at the end of a verb, but not really a suffix, right? Not really a suffix, but it hangs there, right? So that's what we call a clitic. Okay. And then if it goes further, it will become an affix, suffix or prefix, right? So in this case, when it becomes a suffix or prefix, you cannot even detach it, right? You cannot disassemble it from the stem, right? The word not or the word will, you can put it separately, right? But once it becomes an affix, then you cannot even separate it. So, or less grammatical item to more grammatical item, clitic and affix, and so on. So, there are some common processes involved in grammaticalization that you should know. One is semantic bleaching, perhaps the most important one. Semantic bleaching, you know, bleach, to make it less severe, to make it less prominent, right? So semantic bleaching has to do with the loss of semantic content, right? Usually from more concrete to more abstract. So the word will, for example, the word will, which means want or wish, right? Wanhada. Now, when it becomes the future marker, the meaning of want or the meaning of wish is no longer evident, right? But when you use it as a future marker, there's still, when you say, I will marry you, there's still a little bit left for the meaning of want or wish, right? Meaning intend to, like that. And then the second thing is layering and divergence. What happens in grammaticalization is that there will be the coexistence of the lexical item and the new grammatical item side by side. So the old meaning still exists, and the new meaning coexists with the new, right? So two meanings coexist, right? So layering, so two layers, right? And divergence, meaning that they diverge, they go a separate way, right? So once they become grammaticalized, grammatical items are used like grammar item, but lexical items are used like lexical items. So they diverge in terms of use, right? They go separate way. Reanalysis, a reanalysis, you remember, from perhaps the first or the second week of class. So speakers reanalyze, right? Speakers do something. Speakers analyze the construction, the grammatical pattern differently, right? Let's see. Let us go. Let us go, right? So let used to be a full verb. Let used to be a full verb. You see here, I say verb. Us is the object. Go is a different verb, right? So this is what it used to be. Let us go. Let is a verb. Us is the object of let, right? Go is another verb. However, now we have let's go. So let's here is a mood, meaning the invitation or the persuasion, right? It's no longer a verb anymore in the speaker's mind. So let's give you a hand. People say that. Let's give you a hand. So this is like let us give you a hand, meaning let me give you a hand. So this shows that the word let's here, let's with an S, is no longer analyzed as let plus us, right? But it's just one item, let's. It's just like in Korean, ja or upshida that you put at the end, right? And people can also say these days, let's you and him fight. So I support you and him to fight, like that. So you see, let us, you and him. So it means that people who say that reanalyze the construction so that let's is one item, right? Let's is one item. They don't see let's with an S as let us anymore, right? But they see it as the ja form or the upshida that you stick after a verb in Korean. Let's not talk about it. Let's don't talk about it. People say that these days. American people, British people say that these days. So again, it means that let's here is just a grammatical item that means I give you the support to do it, like that. That's why you can say let's don't do it or let's not talk about it, right? And the next process that you might see is morphological reduction. So the original construction loses morphological and syntactic elements that were characteristic of its original category, right? So what do I mean by this? Singular and plural, for example, singular and plural are lost. So that book, those books in Old English, you remember that in Old English you have to use that and those, say or that according to the gender, according to the number, right? According to the category of the noun, right? However, when the word that became a relative pronoun, the book that I like, the books that I like, here you just use the word that across the board, regardless of whether the book is singular or the book is plural, right? So this is what happens when grammaticalization takes place, right? So morphology is no longer important, right? And finally, the last thing that happens is phonetic erosion. So it has to do with the sound, right? That when it becomes a grammaticalized item, when it becomes a grammatical marker, is no longer important. So you will see phonetic erosion or phonetic reduction in most cases. So from going to gonna, right? Bill is going to college. Bill is gonna college is not okay because Bill is going to college here is not a grammatical item, right? Bill is going, this is a real verb, right? Real verb in the present progressive. However, when you have Bill is going, can you add going to go to college? Bill is going to go to college. You can say Bill's gonna go to college because gonna here, gonna there, in number C, can you add, so I missed one go. Bill is going to go to college, right? Number C, Bill's going to go to college. In number D, you can say Bill's gonna go to college because the first going to is a future marker. And it has become a grammatical item already. So it will undergo phonetic erosion, right? Again, let me say this. In A and B, you cannot say that because it's going to is a real verb, right? Not a future marker, not a grammatical marker. But in C, which should be Bill is going to go to college, it can become Bill's gonna go to college because the gonna here is a grammatical marker, which is a future marker, right? So it will undergo phonetic erosion. Because is also the same thing. Because used to be from, I should write this out. Because came from by the cause of. By plus D plus cause plus of. By the cause of. Cause is like way, right? Cause means way, right? By the way of, right? Cause is way. Now, after perhaps 200 or 300 years, by the cause of underwent phonetic erosion, phonetic reduction. So what we have is because, right? Because by became B, right? D is gone because articles are not important, right? And of still there, right? You can have because of. Okay, so coming back to the slide, because, by the cause of, to because, and then it can undergo further phonetic erosion, because or cause, right? So phonetic erosion. By the side of, again, just like by the cause of, beside, right? Let us go, to let's go, to let's go. People don't think of this as us anymore, right? People don't think of apostrophe S as us anymore. Let us go. To let's go, to sko, like that, right? So phonetic erosion. So all of these are frequent processes that you see involved in grammaticalization, right? Semantic bleaching, of course, there will be semantic bleaching. Reanalysis, diversion, two items develop their own ways of use, right? The old form, the new form, morphological reduction, and phonetic erosion. And in many languages, we witness, linguists, historical linguists witness these tendencies, right? Want to become future marker, right? For words that convey any kind of want or wish or desire, for those words to become grammatical marker, future marker. If you will, if you have the will, goodwill, and so on, right? So these are words that used to be lexical items, right? If you will, if you want to, if you have the will to do so, goodwill, and so on. Go tends to be future marker also in many languages of the world, right? Irrealis here has to do with things that are not facts, things that are not factual, right? This is what we have in English, right? Things, so when I will explain go perhaps in 10 minutes from now. So go, actually the verb of action to move from one place to another place, right? Go from one place to another place, verb of movement, to an irrealist marker, right? Some things that are not factual, and then to future marker, because future is not fact, right? Future is not fact. It can happen or it doesn't have to happen, right? Come is the opposite, right? Come is the opposite of go, right? Which is the past tense, which usually ends up as a past tense marker, right? Because when something comes back, so it means that it's finished, right? So it ends up as a past tense marker. Have meaning possession, right? Possession usually becomes the past tense marker, just as in English, I have done it. It means my action of doing it was finished, right? No and can, we'll talk about that in English. Done in the past, I done it. In many dialects of English, I done it, meaning I did it, right? So the past tense marker. Lack, fail, or refuse, negation. Used to be like lack, meaning right, not enough. Fail, so meaning that you do not succeed. Refuse, you do not do it, right? So these items tend to become negation markers. Like he failed to get up early, it means he didn't get up early, right? So fail here has undergone semantic bleaching. It doesn't mean the same thing as he failed the class like that, right? But it has become a negation marker. And all of these prepositions that you know or you are supposed to know, we call them complex prepositions, right? Complex meaning they are longer than in, on, at, under, right? So because they are long, by means of, by virtue of, by way of. So all of these prepositions underwent grammaticalization already, right? So we'll look at one example today, which is in place of. Remember the steps or the common processes in grammaticalization: semantic bleaching, phonetic erosion, and divergence, and so on. So we'll go through the development of in place of. So first, it started off as a pure locative place meaning. You guys know locative, right? Location. So it indicates location, pure location meaning. So it has the location meaning purely, right? X is in the place of Y, right? X is in the physical location of Y. This is in Middle English. The Lord found him in a desert land. So a land that has been abandoned, right? Desert is abandoned. So the Lord found him in a desert land, in place of horror and of vast wilderness, right? So he is in that place, right? He is in that location of wilderness, like that. So physical location. He, which is X, is in the place of Y, which is wilderness, right? So this is the first use, lexical still, right? Now there's bleaching, right? There's bleaching to some abstract place. So place here is not the physical place like wilderness or place of horror anymore, right? But social position or station or rank or role or status. So kind of semantic bleaching, right? From physical place to some other kinds of place, right? Jonathan rescued the princehood, right? And rose in the place of Judas, his brother. So rose in the place of Judah here is social position, right? Rather than the location where Judah was, right? So there's semantic bleaching also in Middle English, right? And then there's reanalysis and divergence, right? Slots of X and Y can be filled with inanimate objects, right? Slots of X and Y can be filled with inanimate objects. So now the first instance you saw is where you have X, usually a human being, right, in the place of something, right? However, when it became grammaticalized more and more gradually, slots of X and Y can be filled with anything, So some rats have spines. This is from early modern English. Some rats have spines. Spines is like bone, right? Backbone. Spines mingled with their fur, hair. As the Cairo mouse, the type of mouse called Cairo, which has spines on the back in place of hair. So this one is not physical place anymore, right? So in place here is like replacing or instead of, right? Replacing or instead of. So the subject here is the spines, right? Spines are in place of hair. So spines replace like that. Spines replace hair like that. Right? Or how to use honey in place of white sugar. This is not a physical location for sure, right? And how to use honey. So the honey is the subject here. Honey is in place of white sugar, meaning honey substitutes for sugar like that, right? Robot goes to school in place of homebound students. So in place of here is like in the capacity of or on behalf of, right? And then full-fledged grammatical marker nowadays, right? We have in place of plus abstract quality, joy in place of sadness, joy instead of sadness, right? Okay, so that's an example. On top of the next one, on top of is the same thing. So you have on the top of the table, right? On the top of the table. In this case, the head noun, you guys know head noun, right? The most important noun. So the head noun, let me back up. Let's see. Let's see if you know head nouns or not. So if I say the collapse of the economy, what is the head noun here? The most important noun. When you come across this kind of phrase, what do you have to mark? What do you have to mark as the head noun? Collapse, right? So this is the head noun. This is a prepositional phrase, right? That complements the head noun, right? So collapse is the head noun. Now, in English, we usually use, let's say, we usually use the verb here according to the head noun, right? Verbs agree with the head noun, right? So let's say the goodness of the students. Let's say is or are. Is, right? Because you have to use the verb to agree with this thing, right? Not the students, right? You agree with that? However, in some cases, a bunch of flowers. You use is or are. What's the head noun here? What's the head noun? I mean, to keep it parallel, the noun before of, right? Should be the head noun, right? So in this case, bunch should be the head noun, right? Should be. However, most people would select are to go with flower rather than bunch, right? But why? In this case, the goodness of the students is, right? So there is kind of a discrepancy here, right, that we have to explain. Most people would use are with this one to follow, to agree with flowers, right? Because flowers is a plural noun, right? However, in goodness, we use is, not are, according to the student, not like that. Because in this case, we say that grammaticalization occurs so that the head noun is now the word flower rather than bunch. So a bunch of is not like the collapse of or the goodness of anymore. A bunch of is analyzed as one word, which means many, like that. So this is what we call grammaticalization, right? So rather than a bunch, rather than focusing on the fact that it's one bunch, right? One bunch, not like that anymore. But a bunch of has become one word through grammaticalization, and it means many. So we use the word are. Same thing as a lot of, right? A lot of is not a lot. It used to be that a lot. Lot is like a slot of, right? So this is grammaticalized, right? So grammaticalization. So a bunch of is a plural marker, in other words. rather than the fact that it's one bunch, right? Okay? So then come back to the word on top of, same thing. So first it started out as the top, right? This is the head word, the top of the table. So referring to the physical location, the top, right? The top, which is here, the top of the table, which is here, right? Now, then there's reanalysis. Reanalysis. Rather than looking at the word top as a head noun, we speakers reanalyze it as one chunk on the top of plus table. So now in the second one, the table becomes the head noun, right? The head noun. And then when it underwent further grammaticalization, the is removed because it's no longer important. It's no longer seen as a head noun. Top is no longer a head noun that needs the to specify it anymore. So we have on top of, right? On top of plus table. So the is gone because top is no longer a noun, but it's a grammar marker. So we have on top of the table. The table is the head noun. Finally, we have atop the table, including, in this case, involving phonetic erosion, on top of to atop, right? On top, atop, like that. Of is gone, so we have atop the table, right? So same thing going on, right? So on top of, this is like the details. Lexical item, apex, summitas. Summitas is summit, from Latin summit, right? Summit is the highest, right? Hem's top. Hem's top. Top here is like hem, you know, helm is the like helmet, right? Helmet. So the helmet top, this is soldier's hat, right? So this is the real lexical item, meaning the highest point of something, the highest location. Now his top was docked like a priest by thorn. So his top, again, still, his top is head, right? So his highest point, they used to write it on top of the letter. But this became kind of bleached a bit, right? So they used to write it on top of the letter. It's not top as in top like this, but the highest of the letter, which is like top is here, right? Top is here. It's not this top anymore, right? Top of the table is this. But top of the letter is this point, right? He sat atop the mountain. You saw that. the word top was grammaticalized, right? Now, as it became grammaticalized more and more, the meaning is bleached gradually. Army of bees, so this is like many or a lot. Army of bees, from the top of the morning to the cool, dark evening. Top of the morning is, of course, the morning cannot have any top, right? So top is like the beginning, the early morning, like that. One thing heaped on top of the other, right? On top here, this is after grammaticalization, right? There's a top, like that. There's no on top of, but just a top of, right? Finally, we have things like he was top of himself and them. Of course, one cannot be top of one on the top of oneself, right? So here on top of is like very advanced, or he won over them. He is very advanced person. He perhaps, let's see, excels. He excels over people, like that. So from the word top, which means the highest position of someone or something, right, to time, right, from top of morning, on top of the morning, that's time, right, not the physical location anymore. One thing heap on top of another. Now, when one situation is on top of another, right, situations cannot have any top, right, but this means that something like pile up, right? Some things pile up over others, right? But it's not the physical top, right? Thing here could be problems, could be issues, which do not have any top, right? And finally, he was top of himself. of course, he cannot be physically on the top of himself, right? And on the top of other people, on the head of other people, he cannot be like that. But on top of is referring here to perhaps ability or some kind of fluency or some kind of excellence like that. Okay. We are out of time. This needs a longer discussion time, so we'll come back and finish this off on Wednesday and prepare American English for Wednesday also.